On a park bench, Sarah Miller, a homeless mother, taught her 8-year-old daughter Lily with a tattered book. CEO Ethan Hayes, a man of power, observed the scene, moved by the dignity and love that defied their destitution. A meeting that would change everything. Ethan Hayes felt an unfamiliar pull in his chest, something the coldness of numbers and the vastness of his corporate empire had never evoked. Sarah Miller's dignity, unshakable even in the harshest of realities, was a stark counterpoint to his own barren existence, surrounded by luxury yet devoid of human warmth. The image of the mother and daughter, bent over a worn book, etched itself into his mind, a beacon of resilience amidst the city's indifferent hum. He found himself walking, his steps firm, but his mind in a whirlwind. It wasn't charity that drove him, or at least not solely that. There was a curiosity, a desire to understand the source of that silent strength and perhaps to touch a piece of that authenticity he felt missing in his own life. Sarah looked up when Ethan's shadow fell over them. Her eyes, previously focused on the letters of the book, now held a mix of caution and weariness. Her posture, however, remained erect, an invisible shield against the world. Lily, sensitive to the change in atmosphere, hid a little behind her mother, her small fingers clutching the hem of Sarah's worn coat. "Excuse me," Ethan began, his voice sounding more formal than he intended. He was accustomed to commanding boardrooms, not approaching strangers in a park. I couldn't help but notice. What are you reading?" Sarah didn't answer immediately. Her gaze swept over him, registering the elegance of his tailored suit, the subtle gleam of his watch, the aura of power that surrounded him. She had seen many men like him before, and most passed without even a glance or with a look of disdain. "It's a storybook," she finally said, her voice low but steady. "We're on the page about distant kingdoms." A faint smile touched Ethan's lips. "Distant kingdoms sounds fascinating." He paused, searching for the right words. "My name is Ethan Hayes. I'm a businessman." He felt a heat rise to his face, the irony of his simplistic introduction. I don't mean to bother you, but I've seen you here many times, and the way you teach your daughter, it's inspiring." Sarah frowned slightly, her guard still up. Compliments were rare, and coming from someone like him, almost suspicious. "I appreciate your comment, Mr. Hayes," she said, her politeness tinged with distance. "But we're fine." Lily, for her part, peeked from behind her mother, her large, curious eyes fixed on Ethan. The girl didn't feel the weight of adult suspicion, only the novelty of a different face. Ethan noticed Lily's gaze and knelt slightly, trying to appear less imposing. "Hello, Lily. Do you like stories?" Lily nodded shyly, an almost inaudible sound of agreement. "I'd like to." Ethan hesitated. How to offer help without sounding condescending? How to breach the barrier of pride he saw in Sarah's eyes? "I'd like to invite you both to lunch. There's a nice cafe not far from here. Or perhaps I could help in some other way. A place for you to stay, perhaps." The offer, spoken so directly, hung in the air like both a promise and a challenge. Sarah's heart leaped, a mix of hope and panic, a place to stay, warm food. These were dreams she suppressed daily, but the dignity that kept her standing, the same dignity Ethan admired, prevented her from accepting immediately. To accept meant admitting the extent of her vulnerability, and that, for her, was a heavier burden than the night's chill. Her eyes met Ethan's. He didn't seem to pity her, but something deeper, something she couldn't name. The city continued its constant hum, but on that park bench, time seemed to have frozen, awaiting her answer. Lily's hunger, the cold that would soon come with dusk, the night spent under the cloak of stars. All of it screamed for a chance. But the price? What would be the price? Sarah squeezed Lily's hand, a silent gesture of protection and doubt. The park's hum, previously an indifferent backdrop, now seemed to intensify the pressure on her decision. Ethan's voice, though gentle, still echoed with the weight of a world she had learned to distrust, offering a home, warm food. These were words that promised salvation, but also carried the shadow of dependence, of losing her precious pride. She had seen pity in the eyes of many, but in Ethan she perceived something different, a genuine curiosity, perhaps even admiration, that disarmed her in a strange way. Her eyes met Lily's, who now watched her with silent expectation, her lips pressed together, her stomach rumbling softly, a sound only Sarah could hear. That small sound was louder than any argument of dignity. Her daughter's hunger was an undeniable force, an imperative that superseded any lingering wounded pride. "Lunch," Sarah finally said, her voice a thread, almost inaudible, but laden with an irrevocable decision. "Just lunch, Mr. Hayes, and we thank you." She made sure to emphasize the limitation, an attempt to maintain some distance, not to accept the totality of the offer all at once. A relieved and genuine smile lit up Ethan's face. The warmth of that smile was unexpected, and Sarah felt a pang of something she couldn't identify. "Ethan Hayes," he corrected gently. "Please, call me Ethan, and the pleasure is all mine, Sarah Miller." He turned slightly, gesturing towards a busy street. "The cafe isn't far. We can walk." As they walked, Ethan's pace adapting to Lily's tiny steps, Sarah felt the weight of curious glances. People passed, some with a quick look of disapproval at her worn clothes next to Ethan's impeccable suit, others with pure indifference. That contrast was a constant reminder of the barrier that separated them, but the warmth of Lily's hand in hers, and the little girl's hand that occasionally reached out to touch the expensive fabric of Ethan's coat, was a reminder that for now they were together. The cafe was cozy. The aroma of roasted coffee and freshly baked pastries filled the air. A bell tinkled cheerfully when they entered. Lily stopped, her eyes wide, absorbing every detail. The polished wooden tables, the colorful cups, the steam rising from an espresso machine. It was a world of comfort and warmth she rarely experienced. Ethan guided them to a secluded table near a window. "Please, make yourselves comfortable," he said, his tone gentle. "Order whatever you like." Sarah felt a lump in her throat. The simplicity of the gesture, the absence of judgment, was almost overwhelming. Lily, on the other hand, was already examining the illustrated menu with avid interest. "Mom, look, they have pancakes," she whispered, pointing to a colorful image. "Pancakes sound like an excellent choice," Ethan interjected, a small smile on his lips. "And what would you like, Sarah?" She ordered something simple, a sandwich and a tea, feeling strangely exposed by his attention. As they waited, a comfortable, yet tense, silence hung over the table. Lily drew with her finger on the condensation of the table, oblivious to the complexity of the situation. "You said you're a businessman, Ethan," Sarah began, breaking the silence, trying to understand the man across from her. "What do you do?" He hesitated for a moment, as if the answer was more complicated than it seemed. I manage a technology company. It's a demanding job, but it also offers many opportunities." He looked at Lily, who was now observing the cafe's customers with a dreamy air. "And you, Sarah, what did you dream of being before? Well, before all this?" The question caught her off guard. Dreams. How long had it been since she last thought of dreams? Her eyes wandered to the window, to the busy street where life went on its indifferent course. An almost imperceptible sigh escaped her lips. Ethan's voice, patient and unpressured, invited her to a place where she could be more than just a homeless mother. A place where Sarah Miller, The woman still existed, with her own longings and a story he seemed genuinely interested in hearing. That lunch, she realized, was more than just food. It was an invitation to be seen. The invitation lingered, shrouded in the aroma of coffee and the sweetness of Lily's pancakes, which she now ate with a contained yet visible joy. Dreams. The word sounded strange, almost archaic on her tongue. Dreams were luxury she had buried deep beneath layers of necessity and survival. I wanted to be a teacher, Sarah finally said, her voice so low it barely broke the soft hum of the cafe. She looked at her hands, resting on the table, calloused and with short nails, a stark contrast to Ethan's well-manicured hands. I always loved books, stories, and the idea of sharing that with children. A sad smile touched her lips. It seems so distant now. Ethan didn't interrupt her. He just listened, his eyes fixed on her with an intensity that Sarah felt to her very soul. The expression on his face wasn't pity, but a comprehension that surprised her. "That's a noble aspiration, Sarah," he responded, his voice calm and thoughtful. "What happened? What took you away from that path?" The question, though gentle, opened a fissure in the wall Sarah had built around her past. She hesitated, her heart clenching. To tell her story meant to strip herself of her armor, to reveal her wounds. But the sincerity in Ethan's eyes was an unexpected balm. "Life happened," she said, a heavy sigh escaping. "My father fell ill. I had to drop out of college to work and help at home. Then came Lily. Her father left us when he found out about the pregnancy. I tried everything, but without a degree, without support. Doors closed one by one." She paused, her eyes welled up, but her voice remained steady. "I don't regret Lily. She is my strength, my reason for being. But the path became very difficult." Lily, oblivious to the depth of the conversation, looked up from her empty plate. "Mom, can I have an orange juice?" she asked, her childlike voice breaking the tension. Ethan smiled at Lily, a smile that reached his eyes. "Of course, Lily. We can order a big orange juice for you." He turned to Sarah again, the seriousness returning to his gaze. "Sarah, you are a strong woman. The way you care for Lily, the way you educate her, that is more valuable than any degree or status." Ethan's words hit Sarah with the force of a wave. She wasn't used to being praised for her strength, only to feeling the weight of it. A solitary tear escaped down her face, but she quickly wiped it away, embarrassed. "Thank you," she whispered, gratitude choking her voice. The waiter brought Lily's juice, and Ethan took the moment to lean in slightly, his voice lower. "Sarah, I know you only accepted lunch, and I respect that, but winter is coming. The nights will get colder. I can't ignore what I saw in the park." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I have an empty guest apartment. It's simple, but it's safe, heated. It would be for an indefinite period until you both get back on your feet. No obligations, no expectations. Just a place to stay." The offer, now more concrete, hung in the air, heavier than before. An apartment, heated, safe. Sarah's heart pounded. It was everything she dreamed of for Lily, a refuge from the biting cold, the dampness of nights spent outdoors. But the independence she so cherished, the dignity that kept her standing, fought against acceptance. She looked at Lily, who was drinking her juice, an orange moustache forming above her lip. The girl coughed lightly, a sound that made Sarah feel a chill in her stomach. I don't know what to say, Ethan," she confessed, her voice almost a whisper. The internal struggle was visible in her eyes. The city outside continued its relentless rhythm, indifferent to the decision that would change their lives. The soft hum of the cafe, The clinking of cups and the distant laughter of other patrons seemed to amplify the silence that had settled at Sarah's table. She felt Ethan's gaze, patient, yet laden with an expectation that suffocated her. Lily's cough, so light, yet so real, echoed in her mind like an alarm. Winter, the cold nights, the penetrating dampness that seeped into her bones, the constant worry for her daughter's fragile health. Pride, dignity, words that had been her shield, her only unshakable possession amidst deprivation. But what value did those words hold when confronted with the fear of her daughter falling ill, of not being able to offer her the minimum of comfort and security? Sarah clasped her hands under the table, feeling the roughness of her skin. She looked at Lily, who now watched her with childlike curiosity, the juice moustache still adorning her lips. The girl's innocence was a mirror reflecting the harsh reality of Sarah's choice. "Mr. Hayes," she began, her voice hoarse, almost a whisper. I can't just accept. It's not charity I'm looking for." Ethan leaned in slightly, his expression serious but without a hint of judgment. "I understand your reluctance, Sarah," he said, his voice low and firm, cutting through the cafe's hum. "And it's not charity. Think of it as an opportunity, an investment. My guest apartment has been empty for months. It's a waste. And I see in you a capable woman with a strength many don't possess. A degree doesn't define a person's worth, much less their ability to rise again." He paused, his eyes fixed on hers. "I ask for nothing in return, only that you and Lily have a safe place to spend the winter, a place where Lily can sleep in a warm bed, and you can worry less about the cold and more about the future." Ethan's carefully chosen words disarmed Sarah's last barrier. It wasn't charity, he had said. It was an opportunity, an investment. The way he saw her strength, her capability, was something she hadn't heard in years. It wasn't pity, but recognition. And Lily's future. The image of her daughter with a genuine smile, sleeping soundly, without the fear of cold, was irresistible. A stubborn tear escaped the corner of Sarah's eye, but this time she didn't wipe it away. It was a tear of relief, of exhaustion, of a hope she had forgotten existed. "Ethan," she finally said, her tone laden with deep emotion, I accept. For Lily." She looked at her daughter, who now smiled at her, as if sensing the change in the air. "But I promise I will find a way to repay you. I won't accept this as an endless gift." A soft, genuine smile lit up Ethan's face. The warmth of that smile was a balm to Sarah's wounded soul. "Don't worry about that now, Sarah. The most important thing is that you both are safe." He extended his hand across the table, and Sarah, after a brief moment of hesitation, shook it. The touch was brief, but the sensation of warmth and firmness lingered in her palm. It was a handshake that sealed not just an agreement, but the beginning of an unexpected connection. The waiter brought the bill, and Ethan paid without hesitation. As they left the cafe, the tinkle of the bell sounded different, like a chime of a new beginning. The afternoon sun began to dip, painting the sky with orange and purple hues, and the wind already brought a harbinger of the cold that would soon come. Sarah held Lily's hand, feeling the warmth of the small palm. The contrast between her worn clothes and Ethan's impeccable suit was still stark, but the barrier that once seemed insurmountable now felt a little less solid. "We can go there now, if you like," Ethan suggested, his tone gentle. "That way you can see the apartment and settle in before it gets dark." Sarah nodded, a lump in her throat. Her heart pounded in her chest, a mix of relief and an unknown anxiety. Suddenly the future, which had once been a cold and uncertain fog, gained more defined contours, but also brought with it a new set of questions. What would it be like to live under a stranger's roof? What did fate hold for them, now that they had crossed this invisible line? As they walked down the busy street, Sarah felt the weight of a new hope, fragile and precious, blooming in her heart, but also the shadow of uncertainty lingering over every step towards the unknown. The chilly afternoon wind whipped Sarah's hair as they walked, but she barely felt it. Her body felt light, almost floating, though her steps remained firm beside Ethan. Lily, her small hand nestled in hers, skipped a little, oblivious to the emotional storm brewing inside her mother. The city's hum, once an indifferent background noise, now seemed to sing a melody of relief and uncertainty. They turned a corner, and Ethan pointed to a modern building with a discreet facade and large windows reflecting the orange sky. It wasn't an imposing skyscraper like those Sarah imagined he inhabited, but it looked solid, well-maintained, and above all, safe. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine, not from cold, but from a deep emotion that threatened to overflow. As they entered the lobby, the warm air and the soft scent of cleanliness enveloped her. The doorman, a grey-haired gentleman, greeted Ethan with a respectful nod. Sarah felt the discreet glances, but there was no judgment, just the natural curiosity of someone seeing a new person. The elevator ascended smoothly, and silence filled the small space, punctuated only by the faint hum of the machine and Sarah's held breath. In the fifth-floor hallway, Ethan stopped before a light wooden door. He inserted a key, and the click of the latch unlocking echoed in the silence. "It's here," he said, his voice calm. Sarah hesitated for an instant, her heart pounding. She took a deep breath and entered, Lily close behind her. The apartment was simple, but immaculate. The walls were a neutral tone, the floors light wood, and wide windows offered a partial view of the city. There was a small living room with a comfortable sofa and a coffee table, a compact but functional kitchen, and what appeared to be a bedroom. Everything was clean, organized, and most importantly, heated. The gentle warmth enveloped Sarah like a hug, a stark contrast to the damp cold of the nights they had spent in the park. Lily let go of Sarah's hand and ran into the living room, her small feet softly pattering on the floor. She touched the sofa, the table, her eyes wide with wonder. "Mom, it's beautiful. Is there a real bed here?" she asked, her voice full of an innocent joy that made Sarah's heart clench. A stubborn tear escaped down Sarah's face, but this time she didn't wipe it away. It was a tear of overwhelming gratitude. "Yes, my love," she whispered, her voice choked. "A real bed." Ethan watched the scene with a gentle smile. In the bedroom, there's a single bed and an empty wardrobe. The kitchen has the basics, and the fridge is stocked with some essentials for you. There's also a bathroom with hot water. Everything you need for tonight. He handed Sarah a keychain with 2 keys. One for the building's entrance door and one for the apartment. If you need anything at all, please don't hesitate to call me. He indicated a small paper with a phone number on the coffee table. "I'll leave you to settle in. Make yourselves at home." Sarah could barely speak. "Ethan, I don't know how to thank you." He shook his head, the smile still on his face. "No need to thank me, Sarah. Just rest. Tomorrow we can talk about the next steps, if you like." He turned to Lily, who was now looking out the window. "Good night, Lily. Sleep well." "Good night, Mr. Hayes," Lily replied, turning to him with a bright smile, the juice mustache already forgotten. With a final nod, Ethan left, closing the door softly behind him. The click of the latch this time didn't sound like an end, but like the beginning of something new and promising. Sarah stood in the middle of the room, the heavy keychain in her hand. The silence of the apartment was different from the cold, threatening silence of the park. It was a silence of peace, of security. She looked at Lily, who was now exploring the bedroom, her little cries of surprise and joy echoing. She walked slowly to the window, watching the city lights that began to twinkle in the twilight. The weight of years of struggle seemed to dissolve, replaced by a wave of relief so intense it made her sway. A warm bed, a roof over their heads, hot water for a bath. Simple luxuries that felt like miracles, but along with the gratitude, a new wave of thoughts arose. The magnitude of Ethan's gesture was overwhelming. He had offered more than shelter. He had offered a chance, a hope. And what would she do with it? How would she repay this generosity? The promise she had made to find a way to reciprocate echoed in her mind. Sarah felt the deep weariness of her journey, but also a renewed energy, a flame she thought had long been extinguished. The scent of something new, of wood and cleanliness, permeated the air. It was the scent of a new beginning. She turned to the bedroom, where Lily was already bouncing on the soft bed, laughing. The sound of her daughter's laughter, free and carefree, was the sweetest melody Sarah had ever heard. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Sarah felt that maybe, just maybe, it could be bright. The soft click of the door closing reverberated through the apartment, a sound that sealed Sarah and Lily's presence within that new sanctuary. Sarah still held the keys, the cold metal contrasting with the warmth that now enveloped her. Lily's laughter echoed from the bedroom, a sound so pure and joyful that Sarah felt a lump form in her throat. It was the laughter of a child who had just discovered a world of wonders, a world that, until a few hours ago, seemed unattainable. She walked to the bedroom, finding Lily bouncing on the single bed, her hair flying in a tangle of happiness. "Mum, it's so soft, it's like a cloud!" Lily exclaimed, stopping to jump and throw herself onto the mattress, sinking into its softness. Sarah smiled, a genuine smile she hadn't felt in a long time. She knelt beside the bed, touching her daughter's hair. "Yes, my love, it's a cloud just for you." The fridge, as Ethan had promised, was stocked with the basics: milk, bread, fruit, yogurt. Sarah prepared a simple yet nutritious dinner, something they hadn't enjoyed in weeks. The smell of warm food filled the small kitchen, an aroma of normalcy that soothed her soul. Lily ate with a voracious appetite, her eyes shining with satisfaction. After dinner, Sarah guided Lily to the bathroom. Hot water streamed from the shower, creating a comforting mist. Sarah washed Lily's hair, feeling the grime of days in the park wash away down the drain. Her daughter's skin, once rough and cold, was now soft and rosy. Lily hummed softly under the water, the melody of her joy filling the small space. Sarah felt a pang of guilt for not having been able to provide this before, but the gratitude for that moment surpassed any regret. Coming out of the bath, Lily was wrapped in a soft, fragrant towel, her eyes heavy with sleep, but still shining with the day's emotion. Sarah tucked her into bed, telling a fairy tale she'd invented herself, about a brave princess who overcame many challenges to find her home. Lily fell asleep quickly, a serene smile on her lips, her small hands clutching the blanket. Sarah stayed there for a long time, watching her daughter sleep soundly, the soft sound of her breathing filling the room. It was a sound of peace, of security, something Sarah had longed for. With Lily sleeping, Sarah allowed herself to feel the weight of everything. She walked back to the living room, the city lights twinkling through the window. The silence of the apartment was different from the oppressive silence of loneliness. It offered space to think, to breathe. She touched the smooth surface of the coffee table, where the paper with Ethan's phone number still lay. The promise to reciprocate weighed on her mind, but not in an agonizing way. On the contrary, it was a determination. Ethan had offered them not just a roof, but a foundation, a chance to rise again, to prove her worth. Sarah had been humiliated, judged, and ignored by so many, but Ethan had seen her. He had seen her strength, her dignity, her dedication to Lily, and that was an invaluable gift. She couldn't fail. She couldn't allow his generosity to be in vain. A plan began to form in her mind, still nebulous, but with outlines of hope. She needed a job, stability. She needed a future for Lily that didn't depend on anyone's charity, however kind that charity might be. She sat on the sofa, feeling the weariness of years of struggle weighing on her. But it wasn't a hopeless weariness. It was the weariness that precedes a new beginning, the exhaustion of a battle won, and the energy that arises with the promise of a new one. Sarah lay down on the sofa, curling up in a blanket she found in the closet. The soft fabric and the fresh scent of cleanliness were a balm to her senses. The warmth of the apartment cradled her, and the city lights outside seemed to whisper promises of a tomorrow. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in a long time, sleep didn't feel like an escape, but a well-deserved rest, full of dreams of a brighter future. The morning light filtered softly through the curtains, drawing golden patterns on the wooden floor. Sarah awoke with a feeling of lightness she hadn't experienced in a long time. There was no biting cold that made her shiver upon opening her eyes, no distant sound of traffic or the smell of dew mixed with dust. There was only the comforting warmth of the blanket, the scent of cleanliness, and the serene silence of the apartment. For an instant, she needed a moment to process the reality. A roof, walls, a real bed, or in her case, an incredibly comfortable sofa. A genuine smile bloomed on her lips. She stretched, feeling every muscle relax, a luxury that life in the park had denied her. A small noise from the bedroom indicated that Lily had also woken up. Sarah got up, walking silently to the door. There, Lily was sitting on the bed, her hair tangled, her eyes still sleepy, but a wide smile already lit up her face upon seeing her mother. "Mom, I slept on a real cloud," she exclaimed, her voice still hoarse with sleep. Sarah's heart filled with an indescribable joy. It was for Lily that she had fought, and it was for her that she would continue to fight. The determination that had formed the night before now burned with crystal clarity. She needed to act, not just accept. After a simple but satisfying breakfast of toast and milk, Sarah sat at the coffee table. Ethan's keys rested there, next to the paper with his number. She picked up the paper, feeling its rough texture, and memorized the digits. Her dignity cried out for a way to reciprocate, not in money, but in effort, in worth. Ethan had given her a platform, and she would not waste it. She would not be a passive recipient. The first step, she decided, was to find a job, not just any job, but something that could offer stability, that could prove she was capable, that she deserved this chance. The idea of calling Ethan at that moment seemed premature. She wanted to have a more concrete plan before approaching him. He had said, "Tomorrow we can talk about the next steps, if you like." She wanted to talk, but not to ask for more help, but to show her proactivity. She picked up the phone Ethan had left, a simple cell phone she noticed, also on the coffee table, charged and ready for use, another silent kindness, and began to research employment agencies, part-time positions that could be reconciled with Lily's care, public schools in the neighborhood. Information began to accumulate, and with it, hope solidified. Hours passed. Lily drew on the floor with some crayons Sarah found in a drawer, while Sarah delved into the possibilities. The morning sun gave way to the softer light of the afternoon. She knew she needed to talk to Ethan soon. She couldn't just disappear with the keys. Gratitude, though immense, would not prevent her from seeking her independence. She picked up the phone again, Ethan's number already dialed. She took a deep breath. "Hello, Ethan," she practiced in a low voice. "I'd like to talk about how I can start looking for work." No, that sounded too formal, too direct. "Ethan, thank you for everything. I'd like to discuss how I can reciprocate this generosity." Better. She felt a tremor of nervousness, but also of excitement. The promise of a bright future wasn't a passive gift. It was an invitation to build. and Sarah was ready to pick up the tools. Sarah felt the adrenaline course through her veins. It wasn't the paralyzing fear that had accompanied her for so long, but the pure energy of determination. She wouldn't just pick up the tools. She would sharpen them, use them with all her strength. The hours that followed were a marathon of research. The small apartment, once a silent sanctuary, now resonated with the soft click of the phone keys and Sarah's whispered reading. She searched for everything, daycares or public schools in the neighborhood that could accommodate Lily, social assistance programs for single mothers and, above all, job openings. She focused on roles that didn't require recent university degrees, aware of her gap in her resume. Cleaning, customer service, office assistant, anything that would allow her to start, that would give her a foothold. Each advertisement read was a mix of hope and anxiety. There were so many requirements, so many barriers. But Sarah wouldn't allow herself to be discouraged. The image of Lily's smile upon waking in the real cloud was her fuel. Lily, oblivious to her mother's storm of thoughts, was immersed in her own world. She had discovered a box of simple toys, wooden blocks and some cloth dolls that Ethan had provided. The sounds of her daughter building towers and inventing dialogues filled the air, a melody of innocence that calmed Sarah's agitated soul. From time to time, Lily ran to her mother, proudly showing off a new creation, and Sarah gave her a tight hug, a kiss on the top of her head, before returning to her search. The afternoon advanced, the sun tinging the sky with orange hues before dipping below the horizon. Sarah had compiled a list of phone numbers and email addresses. It was a start, a tangible plan. But before anything else, she needed to talk to Ethan. She couldn't postpone it. The gratitude she felt was too deep to be expressed only with words. She needed to show him that his trust had not been misplaced. She picked up the cell phone again, Ethan's number flashing on the screen. Her heart beat a little faster. It was a step out of her comfort zone, into the uncertainty of a new dynamic. She took a deep breath, closed her eyes for an instant, and then touched the call button. A long, muffled ring echoed through the apartment before a calm, masculine voice answered. "Ethan Hayes," the voice said, professional and somewhat distant. Sarah felt a lump in her throat, but she swallowed it. "Hello, Ethan. It's me, Sarah." There was a small pause on the other end of the line. "Sarah, good to hear from you. Are you both doing well? Did Lily like the apartment?" His tone softened, a subtle warmth replacing the formality. "Yes, we're great. Lily is loving it. It's all more than we could have dreamed of. Thank you, Ethan, for everything. Truly." Gratitude overflowed in her voice. "No need to thank me, Sarah. I'm happy to know you're comfortable. I called because, well, I spent the day researching. I need to find a job. I don't want to be a burden. You gave us a chance, and I want to prove I'm worthy of it. I have some ideas, and I'd like to discuss how I can start looking for work and, of course, about school for Lily." Sarah spoke quickly, with the urgency of someone who needed to justify herself, but also with the conviction of her determination. A silence filled the line again, but this time it didn't seem to be of surprise, but rather of reflection. Sarah waited, her heart hammering in her chest. "Sarah," Ethan finally said, his voice a little softer, "I expected you to say something like this. Your dedication is one of the things that impressed me most. I'm happy you're thinking about the future. Tomorrow, if you can, I'd like to meet with you. We can talk about all this more calmly. I have some suggestions that might help. How about late afternoon, after Lily is settled?" The offer was more than Sarah expected. "Yes, of course. Tomorrow afternoon would be perfect. Thank you so much, Ethan." Immense relief washed over her. She had taken the first step. "Great. I'll call you with the exact time and place. For now, rest, and don't worry about being a burden. That was never my intention." The call ended with a soft click. Sarah lowered the phone, feeling the warmth of the device in her hand. The meeting with Ethan the next day would no longer be just to thank him, but to chart a path. She wasn't asking for charity, she was seeking a partnership, an opportunity to rise again with her own strength. And the promise of a bright future seemed, for the first time, within her grasp. The next day dawned with a different expectation. It wasn't the paralyzing anxiety that had consumed her for so long, but a vibrant, almost effervescent energy. Sarah woke before Lily, the soft sound of Lily's breathing in the next room, serving as a constant reminder of what was at stake. She chose her clothes carefully, a simple but clean and well-arranged outfit, wanting to convey seriousness and respect. The mirror reflected an image she rarely saw lately, a woman with a purpose, despite the glimmer of apprehension in her eyes. When the kitchen clock struck 5 to 9, the discreet sound of a horn echoed from the street. Sarah grabbed her small bag, gave a last kiss to Lily's forehead, who was still sleeping soundly, and went downstairs. Ethan was leaning against his car, an elegant and discreet sedan, the picture of calm and confidence. He smiled when he saw her, a smile that dissipated some of the ice in her chest. "Good morning, Sarah," he said, opening the car door for her. "Did you sleep well?" "Good morning, Ethan," she replied, settling into the soft leather seat. "As well as one can sleep with their mind racing a mile a minute." He chuckled softly as he walked around and got into the driver's side. "I understand. It's a lot to take in." The car glided smoothly through the streets, the morning traffic beginning to intensify. Sarah watched the urban landscape pass by, the glass and steel buildings rising against the blue sky. With each block, she felt the distance between her old world and this new one shorten. The city looked different from this angle, less hostile, more full of opportunities. In a short time, the car stopped in front of an imposing skyscraper which seemed to touch the clouds. The name Hayes Enterprises was engraved in discreet yet elegant letters above the main entrance. Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. It was even grander than she had imagined. "Ready for the immersion?" Ethan asked, an amused glint in his eyes. Sarah took a deep breath, straightening her shoulders. "Ready." The interior of the building was a spectacle of modernity and efficiency. The lobby was spacious, with polished marble floors reflecting the light and abstract artworks adorning the walls. People in business attire hurried about, the sound of their footsteps softly echoing. Sarah felt small and a little out of place, but Ethan's calm presence by her side was an anchor. They took a silent elevator that quickly took them to a high floor. The doors opened to a corridor with a panoramic view of the city. Ethan led her to a meeting room with a polished conference table and a glass wall offering a breathtaking view. "This is the Corporate Social Responsibility Department," Ethan explained, gesturing to the room and the adjacent offices. "It's one of the pillars of our philosophy. We believe that a company should not only generate profit, but also positively impact the community." He sat at the table and indicated a chair for Sarah. In front of her, there was a folder with the Hayes Enterprises logo. "I've prepared some information for you." Sarah opened the folder. Inside, there was the department's organizational chart, social project reports, and a detailed description of the position he had offered. She read carefully, Ethan explaining each point with clarity and passion. "Our team works on various fronts: educational programs, support for vulnerable families, sustainability initiatives," he continued. "We believe that your personal experience, your resilience, and your empathy would be invaluable to us. You wouldn't just be an employee, you'd be a voice, a bridge between the company and those who need it most." Sarah absorbed every word, imagining herself in that environment, contributing, making a difference. Doubts still lingered, but with each of Ethan's sentences, they became fainter. He wasn't offering a favor, but a genuine opportunity, a recognition of her inner strength. "I understand the importance of your work," Sarah said, her voice firm, though her heart still beat a little faster. "But I've never worked in a corporate environment. I'm afraid of not being up to the task." Ethan leaned in slightly, his gaze serious and encouraging. "Sarah, skills can be learned. What cannot be taught is compassion, the unique perspective that comes from having overcome adversity. You have that in abundance. We will provide all the necessary training and support. You won't be alone. Think about it. You wouldn't just be helping Hayes Enterprises. You'd be helping yourself and Lily build a new life, using your own story to inspire and guide others." His words resonated deeply. A new life, not just for her, but for Lily. The image of her daughter running in a school playground, making friends, studying in a safe environment, shone in her mind. Sarah closed the folder, a new kind of determination growing within her. The fear hadn't completely disappeared, but hope and courage outweighed it. She looked at Ethan, her eyes meeting his. "Ethan," she began, her voice choked with emotion, I accept." A wide, sincere smile lit up Ethan's face. "Sarah, that's the best news I've received today. Welcome to the team." He extended his hand across the table, and Sarah shook it, feeling a warmth spread throughout her body. It was more than a professional handshake. It was a seal of trust, the beginning of a journey that promised to transform not only her life, but his as well. The future, which had once been an uncertain fog, now took on sharper contours, vibrant and full of promises. Ethan's handshake was firm and warm, an echo of the promise that had just been sealed. Sarah felt a deep relief, as if a weight she had carried for years had finally been lifted from her shoulders. But along with the relief, a new wave of responsibility and expectation hit her. She had taken a leap of faith, and now the ground beneath her feet felt more solid than ever. "Excellent," Ethan repeated, his smile widening. "Let's organize the details. You can start training next week if that's okay with you. As for Lily, the daycare and school have openings. We can arrange enrollment immediately." He gestured to the folder. "And about the apartment. We already have some options in mind, near a good school and with easy access to public transport. We can visit them this afternoon if you like." Sarah nodded, her mind spinning with the speed of the information. Yes, next week would be good. And seeing the apartments today. That would be wonderful." She could barely believe the rapidity with which everything was happening. In a matter of hours, her life had changed drastically. "Great. I can take you to lunch and then we'll stop by some of the properties," Ethan suggested, his tone practical, but with an underlying sweetness that Sarah was beginning to recognize. "That way you can get an idea and choose what's best for both of you." Lunch was at a discreet yet elegant restaurant near the office. Ethan spoke more about the culture of Hayes Enterprises, the challenges and rewards of the social responsibility department. Sarah, in turn, felt comfortable sharing more about her experiences, not as a victim, but as someone who had learned to navigate adversity. With each word, Ethan listened with a genuine attention that made her feel valued. There was a growing intimacy between them, a connection that went beyond the professional relationship, weaving itself into comfortable silences and understanding glances. In the afternoon, Ethan took her to see 3 apartments. All were bright, modern, and to Sarah seemed like palaces. The last one, however, captured her heart. It was a 2-bedroom apartment with a bright kitchen and a small balcony overlooking a park. Sunlight streamed through the windows, and she could almost visualize Lily playing in the park below. "This one," Sarah said, her voice choked with emotion. "This is perfect. Lily will love the park." Ethan smiled, watching her. "It seems you're already imagining the future here." "I am," she admitted, feeling tears welling in her eyes. "I've never had a place to call ours." "Not truly." He approached, and for an instant Sarah thought he would hug her. Instead, he gently touched her shoulder. "Then this will be your home, Sarah. And Lily's." When Sarah returned to the apartment that had been her temporary refuge, her heart pounded. Lily was sitting on the floor, drawing with crayons. "Mom, you're back!" she exclaimed, running to hug her. Sarah picked her up, her face radiant. "Lily, I have incredible news. We're going to have a new place to live, an apartment all our own, and there's a park right nearby." "A park? And I'm going to school, Mom? Really?" "Yes, my love. You're going to school, and to a brand new daycare. And Mom is going to have a job, a very important job, where I'll be able to help many people, just like Uncle Ethan helped us." Lily's joy was contagious. She jumped and shouted, imagining her new room, her new friends, the park. Sarah watched her daughter, feeling a pure and overwhelming happiness. It was for Lily that she had fought, for her that she had found the courage to accept Ethan's outstretched hand. In the following days, everything moved at a dizzying pace. The apartment documents were signed. Lily's enrollment in school and daycare was confirmed. Sarah spent her last nights in the small apartment, packing her few possessions, but feeling that she was, in fact, packing a future. Moving day arrived. With the help of a small team from Hayes Enterprises, arranged by Ethan, her boxes were transported to the new apartment. Lily ran through the empty rooms, her laughter filling the space. Sarah watched her, a lump in her throat. This was the new beginning she had dreamed of. The next morning, Sarah took Lily to daycare. The girl, a little shy at first, soon joined other children in play. Sarah felt a pang of pride and a pang of bittersweet sadness. Her daughter was growing, finding her place in the world. Then, Sarah went to Hayes Enterprises for her first day of training. The lobby no longer seemed so daunting. She got into the elevator, her employee badge hanging around her neck. In the social responsibility department, she was greeted by a warm team and by Ethan, who awaited her with an encouraging smile. "Welcome officially, Sarah," he said, his eyes meeting hers in a moment that seemed to last longer than a few seconds. "It's a pleasure to have you with us." Sarah smiled, a genuine smile that came from the depths of her soul. She was on the threshold of a new life, not just professionally, but personally. The promise of a home, a career, and perhaps a love was unfolding before her. An unexpected gift from the man who had seen beyond her circumstances and who now walked by her side, building a future that seemed increasingly intertwined. Sarah's smile was the promise of a new beginning, and Ethan felt a wave of satisfaction that he rarely experienced in his solitary life. Sarah's first days at Hayes Enterprises were a whirlwind of information and new experiences. She dived headfirst into the training, absorbing every detail about the social programs, methodologies, and company culture. Her department colleagues, led by a warm woman named Mrs. Davis, welcomed her with genuine curiosity and support. They recognized her unique perspective, not as a weakness, but as an invaluable asset. Sarah discovered that the work was demanding but deeply rewarding. Every report on an assisted family, every meeting to plan an educational initiative resonated with her own journey. She found her voice, not just as a former beneficiary, but as a passionate advocate, capable of connecting corporate policies with the raw reality of the streets. Her empathy was palpable, and soon she became an effective bridge between the team and the communities they sought to assist. In parallel, Lily's life flourished in the new apartment. The park, visible from the balcony, became her private kingdom. She spent hours playing, her shouts of joy echoing through the neighborhood. At daycare, initially shy, Lily quickly made friends, her contagious laughter filling the hallways. Sarah watched her daughter, her heart overflowing with silent gratitude. Seeing Lily so happy and secure was the greatest reward, the fuel for her own determination. Ethan, in turn, found increasingly frequent excuses to visit the social responsibility department. These weren't just work meetings, they were moments to observe Sarah in her new element, to see the confidence growing in her eyes. He found himself smiling when he saw her argue passionately in a meeting or heard her laughter reverberate through the corridors. Work lunches became more frequent, extending to discussions about books, music, and even childhood memories. One afternoon, as Sarah reviewed a project, Ethan approached her desk. "How's Lily?" he asked, his voice soft. "She's great, Ethan. She loves daycare and the park." "Oh, the park is her favorite place. She even made a little friend, little Hannah." A genuine smile lit up Ethan's face. "That's wonderful. I'm happy to know she's adapting so well." Sarah looked up, their eyes meeting. "All of this, it's thanks to you." "No, Sarah," he responded, his voice a little deeper. "It's thanks to your strength, your courage to accept the opportunity. I just opened a door." The silence that followed was not awkward, but laden with a subtle emotion. Sarah felt warmth spread in her cheeks. One evening, after Lily was already asleep in her new room, Sarah sat on the balcony watching the city lights. A buzz on her cell phone startled her. It was a message from Ethan. "Was thinking of you and Lily. Hope you're well. The view from my window reminded me of yours." Sarah smiled, her heart beating a little faster. He was thinking of her. She typed a reply. "We're doing very well. The view from here is beautiful too. Thank you for everything, Ethan." The reply came almost instantly. "You're welcome. Sleep well, Sarah." She lay down, the phone in her hand, a feeling of lightness and warmth enveloping her. The connection between them was deepening, weaving itself into conversations about work, into small gestures of attention, and now into nightly messages that filled the void of her loneliness. Months passed and Sarah flourished. Her confidence at work grew exponentially, and she began to lead her own projects, becoming a respected figure at Hayes Enterprises. Life as a single mother still presented its challenges, but now she had a support network and the security of a home. Ethan was a constant presence, a pillar of strength and affection. They dined together a few times a week, and he even started visiting Lily at the apartment, reading stories to her before bed. Lily affectionately called him Uncle Ethan, and her eyes lit up whenever he arrived. One night, after putting Lily to bed, Sarah and Ethan were in the living room talking in low voices. A soft melody began to play on the record player Ethan had gifted Sarah, a present for their new home. He stood up and extended his hand to her. "Sarah, would you grant me this dance?" She hesitated for an instant, surprise on her face. But then a smile bloomed, and she took his hand. He gently pulled her close, and they began to dance slowly, their bodies moving in sync with the music. Ethan's eyes met hers, and the intensity of the moment was palpable. There were no words, only the silent promise of a future unfolding before them, a future where both their loneliness could finally be filled. Sarah felt his embrace tighten, and she knew with an overwhelming certainty that her heart had found a home not just in an apartment, but in the presence of that man. The melody of the record player, soft and nostalgic, cradled the silence filled by both their breaths. Ethan's eyes, once so reserved, shone with a vulnerability Sarah never thought she'd see. His hand, firm on her waist, conveyed a security that dissolved any lingering doubt. Sarah rose slightly on her tiptoes, and their lips met in a tender, slow kiss that sealed more than an attraction. It sealed a promise. It was the kiss of two hearts that had found their way to each other through adversity and expectations. When they pulled apart, their eyes still closed for an instant, the world around them seemed to have transformed. Ethan caressed her face, his thumb brushing her cheek. "Sarah," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion. I didn't know what life was before you and Lily. My existence was a successful void, filled with work and a loneliness I thought was my destiny. But then you appeared, with your dignity, your strength, your unconditional love. You showed me what's truly important." Sarah listened to him, tears welling in her eyes. She had grown accustomed to her own loneliness, to the daily struggle, and never imagined that someone could see her in such a way. I want more than just to help Sarah, Ethan continued, his voice gaining firmness. I want to build a life with you, with both of you. I want to be the father Lily deserves, and the partner you always dreamed of. I want this apartment, this home, to be the beginning of something much greater. Would you be my wife? Would you accept me as part of your family forever? Sarah's heart pounded. The question, so direct and full of hope, caught her by surprise, but brought with it an overwhelming wave of joy. Yes, Ethan, she whispered, her voice choked. Yes, 1,000 times yes. He embraced her again, this time with a force that seemed to want to merge them into one. Sarah felt complete, loved, and finally, truly at home. The next morning, Lily woke up to the house filled with a different energy. Sarah, radiant, sat on the edge of her daughter's bed. "My love," she said, her eyes shining. "Uncle Ethan and I have very important news for you." Lily sat up, her eyes curious. Ethan, who was waiting at the bedroom door, approached and knelt beside Sarah. "Lily," he began, a gentle smile on his face, "I love your mommy very much, and I love you too. I really want to be part of your family forever. Would you like me to be your daddy?" She looked at her mother, then at Ethan, and a huge smile bloomed on her face. "You're going to live with us, Uncle Ethan, and you'll read stories to me every day?" Ethan chuckled, a warm sound that filled the room. "Yes, Lily. I'll live with you. I'll read stories, and we'll play a lot in the park, and you can call me Daddy if you like." Lily jumped out of bed and hugged Ethan with all the strength of her small arms. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, the words sounding sweet and natural. Sarah watched the scene, her heart overflowing with a happiness that transcended any past pain. This was the future she had dreamed of for her daughter and now for herself. The months that followed were filled with preparations and contagious joy. The wedding was an intimate ceremony in the garden of a small chapel with only a few close friends and colleagues. Lily, dressed in a small white dress, carried the rings, her smile lighting up the day. Years later, the Miller Hayes family flourished. Hayes Enterprises expanded its social programs, with Sarah at the forefront, her story inspiring countless families. Lily grew up, a bright and full of life girl, with the security and love of two dedicated parents. The park bench, where it all began, became a place of memory, a reminder of where they came from and the miracle that compassion and love had wrought. On a sunny afternoon, Ethan, Sarah, and a teenage Lily were sitting on the same bench, watching people pass by. Lily, with a book in her hand, looked up and smiled at her parents. "You know," she said, "sometimes I think about how funny life is. We started here, and now we have everything." Sarah held Ethan's hand, her eyes meeting his. "We have more than everything, my love," she replied. "We have each other, and that is enough." Ethan squeezed her hand, his heart full of silent gratitude. The world could be indifferent, but they had found each other and built their own universe of love and hope. Sarah's dignity, Ethan's compassion, and Lily's innocence had intertwined, forming a family that was living proof that love, indeed, could move mountains and build an unimaginable future. The sun set, painting the sky with shades of orange and purple, and the Miller Hayes family, united and happy, contemplated the horizon, ready for any new chapter life held for them.